He thought he knew his wife and family, until the lies began to unravel. Betrayed by those closest to him, Stuart must navigate a dangerous web of secrets, deception, and hidden truths where love is a battlefield and every choice could cost him everything. How far will he go to reclaim his life before the shadows consume him completely? My name is Stuart. I am 37 years old and work as a supervisor at Callaway Tech in Columbus, Ohio. It was late on a cold winter night, and I found myself lying on the couch in my living room, clothes tossed beside me like trash. The silence was heavy, except for the faint hum of the heater and the distant sounds from upstairs where my brother-in-law lived. His name was Aaron, and he had been living with us for over a year now, but, unlike any guest, he had taken up permanent residence with little regard for boundaries or respect. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift back to the argument that had landed me on this couch that night. The three of us had sat down after dinner to discuss the mounting tension caused by money. I had pulled out the budget sheets and explained that things were tightening. I told Aaron directly that either he needed to contribute toward groceries and utilities, or we had to rethink his living situation. Aaron scoffed and laughed, dismissing the idea as ridiculous. "Family," he said. "You don't charge family." My wife Elena immediately jumped in, defending her brother. She told me Aaron was going through a tough time and needed our support, that talk of money was cruel and heartless. I had watched month after month as my savings dwindled, while Aaron's presence drained the house. I had paid for his phone bill, bought groceries, cleaned up after him, loaned him my tools, and let him drive my truck without asking. He had left dishes piled in the sink for days and never lifted a finger to help around the house. The realization hit me slowly that night lying on the couch. It wasn't just Aaron, it was Elena choosing him over me. Every time I voiced a concern I was met with excuses or guilt trips. Elena made me feel like the bad guy for wanting fairness in my own home. The bitter truth was I was losing my wife to her brother, and I was too blinded to see it. I sipped the lukewarm coffee I had made at 3:30 a.m. and sat at the kitchen table. The house felt empty, like a stage set for a tragedy. I had decided that night to stop trying to fix things with words. It was time for action. Time to reclaim my life. The next morning Elena acted as if nothing had happened. I made no mention of the coffee left brewing overnight. I knew I needed to be clear and firm, so when she finally spoke about Aaron, I told her I was taking a personal day. We needed a real conversation about where this was going. I saw the softness in her eyes for a moment as she seemed ready to apologize, but it vanished instantly. She scoffed and told me it was family, and family didn't get billed for living room furniture or food. The tension in the room thickened. We were walking on a tightrope of broken trust and unmet expectations. As I realized that to save myself, I might have to walk away from everything I had built from the ground up. I spent the day digging through bank statements and bills. The numbers hit me hard. Expenses had risen 60% since Aaron moved in. Groceries doubled, utilities soared, and the real blow was the cash withdrawals Elena made from our joint account without telling me. Thousands of dollars were given to Aaron in secret money that I had scrimped to save for emergencies. When I confronted Elena over the phone, she denied everything until the truth spilled out. She admitted to giving Aaron $5,000 more than she had told me, and all this while telling me to tighten our budget. That was the breaking point. I found an apartment that afternoon, signed the lease, and started packing. My life was no longer here in the house I had shared with Elena. The house had become a prison with invisible bars made of lies and broken promises. The cold wind bit at my skin as I loaded my belongings into the truck. I felt hollow but also strangely free. The weight of years of silence and denial had lifted in one decisive moment. I left behind a house, a marriage, and a woman who had chosen family over me. And I still had no idea what would happen next. The apartment was small, but mine, the kind of place that smelled like new beginnings and quiet nights where I could finally breathe without feeling like an outsider in my own life. I arranged my things with careful precision, a few clothes, my tools, my laptop, and the handful of belongings that reminded me who I was before the weight of this mess crushed me. In the first few days, I avoided answering calls from Elena. Her messages piled up on my phone, each one a mixture of apologies and demands, a tangled web of regret and blame. I kept my distance because I needed space to think, to figure out who I was without the constant noise of betrayal filling every corner of my mind. I walked through the city streets in the evenings, watching the lights blink on in other apartments, imagining lives going on, unaware of the fracture in mine. Sometimes I wondered if Elena even thought about me, or if Marcus, the man she called Aaron, was all that mattered now. The questions burned in my chest, but I pushed them aside, focusing instead on the rhythm of my heartbeat, steady and sure. It wasn't easy being alone, but it was honest. My nights were quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional siren far off in the distance. I started cooking again, relearning how to make simple meals that didn't come from a takeout box or an excuse. I found comfort in the small routines, rebuilding myself one day at a time. The work at Callaway Tech became a refuge. I threw myself into projects late into the night, something to keep my mind busy, something to prove to myself I was still capable, still worthy. Evenings, after the office emptied, I sat alone in the glow of my computer screen, plotting a future where I wasn't defined by a broken marriage or a freeloading brother-in-law. One afternoon, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Elena. Her voice was different, softer, almost fragile. I debated whether to answer, but curiosity won. She said she wanted to talk to me face to face. No arguments, no accusations, just a conversation about what had happened between us. I agreed reluctantly, not knowing if I was ready for what that conversation might bring. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place where strangers could sit side by side without sharing anything. We talked in low voices about everything and nothing. The past, the betrayals, the mistakes, and the love that still lingered between us like a ghost, neither willing to let go fully. Elena admitted she had made choices that hurt me, choices born from fear and misplaced loyalty. She said she never wanted to lose me, but felt trapped between her family and our marriage. The weight of her confession was heavy and unexpectedly stirred emotions I thought I had buried deep. Our conversation ended with no promises, but a fragile understanding that maybe we were both broken and searching for a way back to something better. Whether that path included each other remained uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. Yet as I left the cafe and stepped back into the brisk evening air, the shadows of doubt crept in. Marcus Aaron was still out there somewhere, living a life built on lies and betrayal. A part of me wondered if this was just the beginning of something far more complicated and dangerous than I had imagined. The future was unclear, and the silence between us held a tension that neither of us could quite name, but it was there like a thread stretched tight, ready to snap at the slightest touch. I walked home that night feeling the weight of all the things left unsaid and the ones yet to come. It was a beginning and an ending all at once, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for either. The days blurred together like the fog rolling in over the city streets. I was trying to rebuild a life that had been fractured in ways I hadn't fully understood, yet even as I pieced together the fragments of my existence, the shadows of the past stretched long and dark behind me. Elena's words from the cafe haunted me, reminding me of promises unspoken and trust broken in silence. I found myself haunted by questions I couldn't shake. How deep did the betrayal run? What secrets had Elena kept hidden beneath the surface? And what about Arrow, the brother she'd chosen over me? Did he leave, or was there more I didn't know? The silence between Elena and me grew heavy with unspoken fears and half-truths that neither of us dared to face. I kept to my routines at work, the late nights at the office, and the quiet apartment that felt more like a sanctuary than a home. But the peace was fragile like glass, ready to shatter with the slightest touch. Then one evening, as I was locking up the office, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Single sentence blinked on the screen. "You don't know the whole story." My heart skipped, but I didn't reply. Instead, I stared at the message, wondering if it was a prank or a warning or something far more sinister. The past was catching up, and I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, but I couldn't turn away. The next day, a package arrived at my apartment, no return address and no note. Just a small box wrapped in brown paper. I opened it carefully. Inside was a set of photos. Photos of Aaron, photos of Elena and Aaron together, smiling and laughing at places they had never told me about, places that looked expensive and unfamiliar. There were also pictures of stacks of cash and what looked like a ledger with names and numbers scribbled in neat columns. My mind raced, trying to piece together what this meant. Who had sent it and why? The realization hit me slowly that this was bigger than a freeloading brother-in-law or a broken marriage. This was a secret buried deep and protected with lies. I felt a chill run through me as I understood that Elena and Aaron had been hiding something from me, something that might destroy us all. I wanted to call Elena, but the images kept swirling in my mind like a puzzle I couldn't solve. I needed answers, and I knew I had to find them myself before anyone else did. Before the fragile peace between us was shattered completely. That night, I made a decision that I was going to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The past was no longer a shadow I could ignore. It was alive and waiting, and I had to face it. The night was thick with silence as I sat at my kitchen table, the photos spread out before me like pieces of a fractured mirror reflecting a truth I had never wanted to see. I traced the faces in the pictures of Elena and Aaron, their smiles easy and familiar, but hiding secrets darker than I could imagine. I thought about the money, the ledger, the hidden places, and the laughter that had never included me. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots between the months of lies, the stolen cash, and the betrayal that cut deeper than any wound I had known. I remembered the times Elena had brushed off my concerns, the quick changes of subject, the excuses that now seemed like deliberate distractions to keep me blind to what was happening behind my back. The anger simmered, but beneath it was a deep ache, the ache of a love betrayed and a trust shattered. I wondered how well I knew the woman I had married, if she could hide such things so close to her heart. Sleep eluded me as questions twisted through my thoughts. What had driven Elena and Aaron to this deception? And what were they trying to protect? And how much of my life had been built on illusions that were now crumbling away? Determined to find out, I started digging through the bits and pieces left behind the bills, the emails, the forgotten receipts, looking for clues that would unravel the mystery and bring the truth into the light. Days passed in a blur of restless searching until a breakthrough came unexpectedly. A message on my work email from an unknown sender containing a single address and a time. I knew it was a trap or a test, but I couldn't resist the pull of answers waiting just beyond reach. The location was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place where shadows gathered and secrets whispered in the dark. I arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. Inside the cold space, I found a man waiting, his face hidden in the gloom. He handed me a thick envelope and disappeared before I could ask a single question. The envelope contained documents and photos that confirmed the worst suspicions: money laundering, hidden accounts, and a web of lies tying Elena and Aaron to people I didn't want to imagine. The pieces fell into place like shards of broken glass, forming a picture too terrible to look at, too real to ignore. I was caught in something bigger than my marriage, bigger than my family, a dangerous game where trust was a weapon and betrayal the currency. As I left the warehouse, the night air sharp against my skin, I realized that the man in my life, whom I thought I knew, was a stranger, and the woman I loved was tangled in a darkness that threatened to consume us all. I was alone on a path filled with shadows, and every step forward only deepened the mystery, leaving me to wonder if there was any way out or if I was destined to be lost forever in a maze of lies. Days blurred into restless nights, and I barely ate or slept, consumed by the tangled web Elena and Aaron had woven around me. Every clue I uncovered pulled me deeper into a maze where trust was scarce and danger felt close, like a shadow breathing down my neck. I started noticing unfamiliar cars parked near my apartment, strangers watching, waiting. At work, I was distracted, struggling to focus on projects, my mind replaying every conversation, every smile, every lie that had brought me here. I kept my discoveries secret, unsure who I could trust in a world that suddenly seemed full of secrets and betrayal. One evening, my phone buzzed again, a new message from an unknown number. This time, a warning: stay away or lose everything. Fear and determination warred inside me, but I knew backing down wasn't an option. Whatever was happening had to be exposed, even if it meant losing everything I had left. I arranged to meet a trusted old friend from college, a journalist named Maya, someone with a reputation for digging into stories no one else dared touch. She listened carefully as I laid out the pieces of the puzzle and agreed to help uncover the truth, no matter where it led. Together, we began tracing the money, following shadowy leads from Columbus to other cities, uncovering layers of deception that went far beyond a family feud or stolen cash. It was a criminal underworld, and Elena and Aaron were caught in its center. As we dug deeper, the danger escalated: strange phone calls, threats, and one night, a break-in at my apartment that left no item stolen, but every drawer rifled through. A clear message that someone was watching and wanted me to stop. Despite the fear, I pushed on, fueled by a desperate need for answers and a flicker of hope that somewhere beneath the lies, the woman I loved was still there waiting to be found. Our investigation uncovered a hidden ledger revealing names linked to illegal dealings, contracts signed in secret, and payments funneled through fake companies. Elena and Aaron were more involved than I had ever imagined, and the stakes were higher than I could have guessed. The emotional toll was immense. Each revelation felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart, yet I couldn't turn away. Not when the truth was finally within reach. One night, Maya called me late. Her voice was tense but urgent. "Meet me at the old diner on 5th Street. Come alone." I hesitated but agreed, knowing this could be the break we needed. When I arrived, Maya slid a folder across the table, thick with documents, photographs, and recorded conversations that exposed the heart of the operation and the role Elena had played. I stared at the evidence, feeling numb and betrayed more than ever before. As I left the diner, the cold night air wrapped around me like a shroud. I realized this was no longer just a battle to save a marriage or protect myself. This was a fight for survival, a fight to uncover the truth before it was buried forever. The weight of the evidence pressed down on me as I walked the quiet streets, the papers heavy in my bag like the burden of 1,000 secrets. Each step echoed with the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same. Elin, the woman I had loved and trusted, was now a stranger, tangled in a web of lies and crime. I thought about the life we had built, the dreams we had shared, and how easily it had all crumbled beneath the weight of deception. The betrayal was complete, but beneath the pain was a flicker of something darker, a question I dared not voice. Who else was involved? How deep did this conspiracy go? And most terrifying of all, what would happen if I tried to expose it? I found myself looking over my shoulder, noticing the subtle signs of the unfamiliar faces, the shadows that seemed to follow me through every corner of the city. The world I had known had twisted into something dangerous and unpredictable. One night as I sat alone in my apartment, the phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously, and a voice, low and cold, said, "You should stop looking, Stuart, or you'll regret it." The line went dead, leaving me with a chilling silence and a heart pounding with fear and defiance. I knew then that this fight was no longer just about betrayal or love. It was about survival and truth, and the price I would have to pay to uncover both. I sat back in my chair, the city lights flickering outside the window, casting long shadows across the room. The road ahead was uncertain and filled with danger, but I was no longer willing to turn away. Why, no matter what came next, I was ready to face it head-on. The past had caught up to me, and the story was far from over. The days after that chilling phone call blurred into a relentless storm of fear and determination. My every move felt watched, every step calculated, if I was trapped in a game I hadn't agreed to play. But I refused to back down. I owed myself that much and more. Maya became my anchor, the journalist who refused to let the story die. Her contacts led us to whispers of a shadowy figure known only as Collins, someone with fingers in every corrupt pie in Columbus, a man whose name alone sent ripples of fear through the underworld and whose reach seemed endless. We traced the money flows and the connections, a labyrinth of lies and greed that wound through the city and beyond. Elena and Aaron were just pawns in a far greater scheme. Their actions entwined with Collins' criminal empire, and the more we uncovered, the more dangerous our search became. One evening after a long day of digging, I found myself at a run-down bar nursing a drink and trying to quiet the storm inside when a familiar voice broke through the haze. It was Elin, her eyes red-rimmed and haunted, but still burning with a fierce light that caught me off guard. She confessed that she had been trapped between love and fear, forced into lies she never wanted to tell, and desperate to protect those she cared for most of all. Aaron, her brother, who had been dragged into Collins' world against his will. She begged for my help, not forgiveness, because she knew that might be too much, but to help her save what little was left. The confession stirred a complicated knot in my chest. The woman I loved was flawed, scared, and broken, but still there beneath the shadow. But trust was fragile, and I wasn't sure if I could hold on or if I was being pulled deeper into a dangerous game where love was just another casualty. Together, we planned a way to bring Collins down, a dangerous gamble that meant walking straight into the lion's den with nothing but evidence and hope on our side. The stakes were impossibly high, and failure wasn't an option because lives depended on it, including my own. The night of the operation arrived with a quiet tension that pressed down on me as we moved through the darkened streets. The plan was simple, but the execution was anything but. Every moment stretched taut as we edged closer to the truth and the moment when everything could unravel. Inside the warehouse where Collins operated, we found more than evidence. We found a world of corruption, pain, and betrayal that cut deeper than I had imagined. The confrontation was fierce, a blur of voices, threats, and narrow escapes that left me shaken but alive. In the aftermath, Elena and I stood amidst the wreckage of what had been a nightmare woven through our lives. The truth was out, and Collins was exposed, but the cost had been high, leaving scars that would never fully heal. In the quiet that followed, I realized that love wasn't about perfection or trust without doubt, but about standing together in the face of darkness and choosing to fight even when the future was uncertain. Elena and I had crossed a line from which there was no return, but perhaps in that crossing, we had found a fragile hope for a new beginning. The road ahead was still shadowed by the past, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a cautious warmth in my chest, a promise that even in the darkest night, there could be light. The dawn came quietly, painting the city in soft shades of gray, but inside me, the storm was far from over. The confrontation with Collins had shaken loose truths that rippled through every part of my life. Elena and I were no longer just two people caught in a messy marriage. We were survivors of a battle that tested everything we thought we knew about love, trust, and loyalty. Yet even as the dust settled, questions remained, questions that threatened to pull us apart again. Our fragile peace was shattered one afternoon when a letter arrived at my apartment. No return address, just my name scrawled in bold, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single photograph, Aaron, alive and well, smiling with a woman I didn't recognize, standing in front of a lavish mansion far from the city's shadows. Beneath it, a message, "He's not done yet." The image struck me like a cold wind. After all the pain, all the lies, Aaron was still out there, weaving his web somewhere I couldn't reach. Had he escaped the mess Collins left behind? Or was this a new game, a new threat I wasn't ready for? Elena noticed my change immediately. The quiet nights we'd shared were now filled with unspoken fears and restless tension. She wanted to trust me, to believe the nightmare was over, but I saw the doubt flicker in her eyes. I felt it too, like a shadow lurking just beyond the edge of our fragile hope. Determined not to be caught off guard again, I reached out to Maya. Together we traced the origins of the photograph, following a trail that led us far from Columbus to a wealthy enclave where Aaron seemed to have vanished into a new life of luxury and danger. But why? And for whose benefit? The deeper we dug, the more tangled the web became. Aaron wasn't just hiding. He was building something, a power base no one had expected. His charm and cunning had drawn in new allies, people connected to Collins but with their agendas. The game was evolving, and I realized that to protect what little peace Elena and I had reclaimed, I would have to confront Aaron once and for all. The confrontation was inevitable. I found him in a secluded estate, the luxury a stark contrast to the chaos he'd left behind. The man I faced was both familiar and foreign, older, sharper, but still capable of that reckless charm that had drawn Elena in. Our conversation was tense, filled with accusations, regrets, and truths neither of us wanted to admit. Aaron confessed to his mistakes but defended his choices with a desperation born from fear and ambition. It was clear then that this wasn't just about money or family. It was about survival, power, and the fragile bonds that tie us to those we love and hate in equal measure. I left that place knowing the war wasn't over, but feeling stronger for having faced the enemy within my blood. Back home, Elena and I began to rebuild once more, this time with eyes wide open to the complexities that lay between us. We sought counseling, forgiveness, and the slow healing that only time can bring. Our love was no longer naive but forged in fire, a testament to resilience in the face of betrayal. Yet even as the chapters of our story turned toward hope, the photograph lingered in my mind, a reminder that some shadows never fully fade and that the greatest battles are often those fought within ourselves. The end was uncertain, the future a delicate balance of trust and doubt, love and war. But for the first time in years, I felt ready to walk that path, hand in hand with the woman who had once been my greatest mystery and now my most precious ally.